Hi, everybody. Today I'm going to talk to you about something that I know a lot of you are super interested in, and that is synchronicities and how to use synchronicities to guide you to your best life and how to interpret messages that you're receiving from your inner self and how to manifest your dreams. Okay, so here we go. I'm going to tell you a funny little story. And I'll get into what synchronicities are all about. So on January 22nd, 2021, at 12:22 p.m., this spark of inspiration came to me to name my new project Soul Aid. And I know that it was 12:22 p.m. because at the moment of the inspiration, out of the corner of my eye, I looked up at the clock on my laptop and I saw that it was 12:22. And I immediately went to check whether the name Soul Aid was available as a domain name. And surprisingly, it was. For months, I had been trying and struggling to find the right name that was also available as a domain name for my new project, which would sort of encompass everything that I wanted to share with the world. And Soul Aid was easy to remember, it's short, and it didn't have to be misspelled on purpose, which if you've ever tried to register a domain name for a website or for your business, you know what I'm talking about, okay? So for believers and fans of Carl Jung or Jungian psychology, seeing repeated numbers like 1222021, 1222, which is January 22nd, 2021, 12:22 p.m., when you see numbers in a sequence like that, that is a prime example of what is known as a synchronicity. So, in the 1950s, Carl Jung, who was a prominent Swiss analytical psychologist and a protege of Freud's, he coined the term synchronicity to describe a phenomena that I know many of us have experienced at some point in our lives. And a synchronicity is when seemingly meaningful coincidences occur that are not directly triggered by cause and effect. So if you've ever thought of a friend that you haven't heard from in a while, and for no apparent reason you just thought of them out of the blue, and then that very day or the next day they call you, well, that is an example of synchronicity. And Jung tried to explain the phenomena with his one world or unus mundus theory, which proposes that there's an underlying unifying order to the structure of reality, and that our inner world and our outer world exist as one outside of space and time. And this also speaks to his work on archetypes and the collective consciousness. So if you're interested in that, definitely look up Carl Jung and his work on those ideas. And there's a very famous story involving Carl Jung and a patient of his and synchronicity. So what happened was he was working with this woman who was very rigid in her thinking, and he was having a really hard time breaking through in his therapy sessions with her. And one day during one of the sessions, she was telling him about a dream that she had in which she received a golden beetle. In her dream, someone gave her a ring that is in the form of an Egyptian scarab, which is a golden beetle. And at that very moment when she was telling him about her dream, he heard a knock behind him, a little tapping on the window behind him. And he turned around and he saw a beetle sort of tapping on the window. And the beetle was the closest to a golden beetle or an Egyptian scarab that would have been native to that part of the world where they were in. And he went to the window, got the beetle, and handed it to this woman. And at that moment, something just completely clicked within her. And after that, they started having breakthroughs in their therapy, and she was able to sort of think outside her rigid, rational mindset, which was really important in the therapy that he was having with her. So basically, when synchronicities happen, they give us this overwhelming sense of well-being, and it feels like you're being looked after by the universe, and that the universe has your back, and that it's okay to open up and do that scary thing. So in other words, it's the sense that things in your life are syncing up or aligning in a way that can't be explained by logic. And that is the key to how synchronicities can help guide us to our best life, is the word logic. Because logic is ruled by thinking, and as humans, 95% of our thinking is just repetitive. There have been studies done on this. 95% of our thoughts are basically just recycled and old stories that we keep telling ourselves over and over again about ourselves, about the people around us, about the environment that we live in. Just the same old stories on constant repeat. And thinking alone is often not enough to help get us to our destination, because the path to our best life is often paved with uncertainties and self-doubt. So synchronicities can help us feel reassured, to help us break through those barriers, walk through the fire, and know that we're going to be okay when we come out the other side, and maybe even better because the universe has our back. And there is a tremendous value in that feeling of faith, which propels us forward into the unknown. Synchronicities can help us calm and soothe our fearful emotions so we can do the scary stuff. Okay? And, the feeling that something is meant to be, which is what synchronicities can provide for you, it could really help you break through tough barriers. So, how do we know when we are experiencing synchronicity versus just a coincidence? What's the difference between a synchronicity and a coincidence? Well, this comes down to, basically it comes down to perception and your beliefs, your conditioned beliefs. So someone who has a very rigid, evidence-based mindset, like the woman in the story I told you earlier, they may just put every synchronicity down to a coincidence. Like there's no meaningful connection to anything, But on the other hand, someone who is a big believer of a higher power can make connections where, there really isn't any, and they might see everything as a synchronicity. So coincidences straddle the world of science and belief, and our brains are designed to seek patterns and to make connections to help us make sense of ourselves and our place in the world. So noticing meaningful coincidences is a byproduct of the brain's natural meaning-making system. Pattern-seeking, meaning-making systems, okay? So why should you care about synchronicity, and how is it going to help you in your life? Well, synchronicities, they show up strong and often in our lives when we are on our personal right path, the path that is most aligned with our inner self, our authentic self. So you have an inner guidance system, a natural GPS, which you've programmed with your deepest thoughts, wishes, and desires since you were a child, and you keep putting more information into this GPS system as you live out your life. And this GPS system communicates with you through signs, intuitions, and inner knowings. So when you see these knowings in the outer world, you recognize them as signs, and you draw meaning from them to guide you. The outer world is a reflection of your inner world. And you may not be allowing the fullness of what your life could be into your reality if you don't pay attention to, or if you dismiss signs and synchronicities. So that's why it's important. Synchronicities are important, and that's how they can help you. Okay, but it's important to note that your right path may have nothing to do with in spirituality, your right path could be to open a bakery or become a personal trainer, be an accountant, whatever it is. When you notice more and more synchronicities in your life, it is an indication that you're going in the right direction and you're on the right path. So, how do we recognize synchronicities? What are some of the methods that you can use or some things you can do to train your mind to recognize synchronicities? Well, the first thing is to pay mindful attention. Just be more present in your daily life and pay attention. So in order to recognize synchronicities, you have to develop and use a deeper level of awareness or mindfulness. And mindfulness, like any other skill, can be learned and practiced. And the more you practice the skill, the more magic you're going to see in your life. You're going to see meaningful signs and connections that you can interpret. If you spend a lot of time mindlessly using technology, going about your day on autopilot because you're not walking on a path that was truly chosen by you, your authentic self, maybe it's something your parents wanted, or maybe it's something that society wanted, and you're on this path, you're not going to notice the signs and synchronicities that point you to your destination as easily. And I want you to imagine your life as a journey that's set in a lush, abundant nature reserve with infinite numbers of trails that you can choose from. And all you have to do is to pick a trail that resonates with you and to follow the signs. Okay, so many of us, we don't choose our own trails. We let others tell us which path or trail to walk on, and because we're walking on this path that isn't connected to our inner self, signs and synchronicities can go unnoticed. If you're walking around zombie-like, you're not really going to notice messages and things that are being communicated to you. So, but don't worry, even if you're walking on a path that's not connected to yourself completely, your inner self, 100%, you can still notice signs and synchronicities because they are meaningful connections that we interpret ourselves, okay? So no matter what trail you're on right now, they will pop up. You just need to train your mind to notice them and to interpret them. So first thing to do is to mindfully engage with the world around you so that you don't miss out on important messages. Okay, the second thing you can train yourself to do is to notice repetition. So repetition is one of the biggest signs of synchronicity. When things are aligning, you will notice them in recurring events, things that you see or things that you hear. So for example, you might hear someone say the same phrase over and over again, or the phrase is repeated by many different people in your life in different areas of your life. So you should pay attention to that. So repetition can appear to you in many different ways. It can appear to you in real life, through your friends, through your family, what they say, what they talk about. It can appear to you on a TV show, in a dream, or basically anywhere where there's a platform. So some repetition examples that you can pay attention to are animals, insects, numbers, certain words and phrases or lyrics, and images. When you see these signs, you'll have a feeling that it's unusual to see them in or around the places that you're noticing them. So be aware that you're not just consuming content that's served to you by an internet algorithm, and that's why you're seeing the same things over and over again. No, that's not a synchronicity. A synchronicity is when it feels unusual to you, okay? So the third thing you can do is to keep a journal. Keep a synchronicity journal to keep track of your coincidences, events, and repetitions that appear to have some meaning for you. Sometimes we will forget things, or things don't seem like a big deal at the time, but by writing them down, no matter how big or small, it helps us keep track of them over time and to see how they play out. And it also helps us to notice any further patterns and to help us in interpreting what those signs could mean. So for example, if you noted something as a possible sign, and you can go back and determine whether it actually was a true synchronicity by seeing what happened afterwards. Without acknowledging it and writing it down, you're less likely to remember or notice these sequences of events. So those are the three things you can do to sort of train your mind to recognize when synchronicities appear in your life. And now here are 8 signs that you shouldn't ignore. Synchronicity signs you should not ignore. So the number one synchronicity sign are numbers. Numbers is the biggest sign of synchronicity that suggests that things are lining up for you, especially when you see them in repetition, like 1111, 2222, 1212. So an obvious place for this to happen is on a clock. I started this video by saying that I was struggling with coming up with a name for this new project, this new website that I was putting together. And at the moment that I came up with the name Soul Aid, even though I really liked it, I immediately started to have some doubts about the word soul, because it has this religious overtone to it that I was not 100% comfortable with. But then I looked up at the clock and saw that it was 1222021 1222, or January 22nd, 2021, 12:22 p.m. And for me, seeing that sequence of numbers, it sort of helped me, reassured me, because the number 1 represents new beginnings, and the number 2 represents balance. So when I saw those numbers, it gave me a sense of reassurance that my audience will have a balanced understanding of my new project based on the scope of my content. So I went ahead and registered the domain name, feeling peaceful about the decision. And before learning to recognize synchronicities, I might have spent months trying to find a perfect name or find another name, which would have delayed the launch of my project, which would then lead me to feeling doubt and negativity and defeat. So seeing that synchronicity, those numbers in sequence, that synchronicity, it really helped me. And I often find that at certain times in my life when I just need a little bit of extra reassurance, and I often look up at the clock and there's some combination of 1s and 2s. And that gives me a feeling that I'm on the right path. So repeating numbers can appear on basically anywhere, not just on a clock, so you can see them on doors or signs or basically anywhere. Receipts, invoices, dates, flight numbers, literally anywhere where numbers are used. So just pay attention. So the number 2 synchronicity sign is when you think about someone and then they get in touch. When you haven't seen someone in a while or you haven't talked to them in a while and they get in touch, this is a prime example of synchronicity, and you should pay attention to that. And you have some energetic connection with this person. You should sort of explore that. Maybe, find out what's going on in their lives. Maybe they adopted a new pet, or maybe they're having a problem with some, maybe an insect infestation at their house. And you can sort of take that story and interpret it for yourself. Well, what if they're having problems with insects, for example? Well, what does this insect represent? What does it symbolize? Does it have any hidden message for you? So that is one way to use how when someone contacts you and you haven't talked to them in a while, and you can figure out maybe what that means for you. And the third synchronicity sign is when you run into a person over and over again. And I'm not talking about your neighbors. I'm talking about someone that it would be unusual for you to run into them. Maybe it's even a stranger. But you should follow that trail and see what message that has for you. You obviously have a strong connection with this person. So again, talk to them and hear what they have to say and interpret what they're saying to a meaningful connection that you could use in your own life. Okay, and the number 4 sign of synchronicity is hearing the same phrase over and over again. So I'm going to tell you a little funny story about this. So if you hear someone saying the same thing over and over, or if you hear multiple different people saying the same phrase that seems unusual or out of place, you should pay attention. Years ago, before I started my spiritual journey and energy work, for a period of time in my life, I kept hearing different people say this phrase, beep, or get off the pot. Okay, I'm not saying the beep word on YouTube, but I'm sure you know which word I'm referring to. And I remember it to this day because at the time I thought it was so unusual. Never have any of my friends ever uttered that phrase before or since. But within a week, 2 of them did. And these 2 friends of mine, they lived in different countries. They were not talking about the same situation. They were talking about something that was happening in their own personal lives that had nothing to do with each other or with me. And yet they both said that same phrase. And then after my 2 friends uttered that phrase, I heard it again on several TV shows and such that I was watching at the time, which I thought, this is so weird. Like, is this trying to communicate something to me? So looking back, this phrase was telling me to commit to the project that I was working on, that I was involved in. And in hindsight, I can see that the reason why the project never fully took off was because my heart wasn't in it, and I did not commit to it emotionally, even though on paper this project was really great for me. So I could have saved myself some time and money if I'd only been able to interpret this message, if I'd had a deeper self-awareness to spot and interpret the synchronicity. So if you hear repeated phrases that seem out of place, pay attention to what it's telling you. You could be receiving some advice or a word of warning, or maybe some words of encouragement to pursue something. So just, pay attention. Whatever the case may be, the meaning is going to be personal to you. So you're the only one who can interpret it. Okay, so, and the 5th sign of synchronicity is perfect timing. When you happen to just walk into a store and then it starts pouring outside, or you're driving and you hit all the green lights and it seems like luck is just on your side. Those are examples of perfect timing. And usually when this happens, there isn't really a lesson to be learned. It's basically just showing you that someone or something is looking out for you, and you simply just give gratitude and say thanks and go about your day feeling great that someone or something is looking out for you. That is a great feeling. You could also be in such a high vibrational state that you're attracting these positive experiences to you. And in that case, just keep on doing what you're already doing, because you're already in a high vibe state. So you're manifesting and attracting positive experiences to you. Okay, so the number 6 synchronicity sign is seeing your spirit animal. Okay, if you see animals coming up in your life, presenting itself to you in various situations that you feel is too unique to be a coincidence, then it could be a sign that this animal, the spirit animal, is trying to send you a message. Every animal has its own unique symbolism, and when you see this animal at a particular time in your life, often it may be that it has a lesson for you that you should pay attention to. So here's another funny story of spirit animal and how to recognize them and how to interpret it. This is one of the strongest spirit animal connections I've ever personally had so far in my life. So in December 2020, within the space of 1 week, the lobster kept appearing to me in just the most bizarre and unusual ways. So I was up late one night. It was 4 a.m., okay? I was working, and I was finally ready to go to bed. And my pet bunny was up keeping me company, and I picked him up to say goodnight to him, to put him back to his room for the night. And on the way to his room, I walked by my own ensuite bathroom and noticed nothing unusual, okay? I walked down the hallway into our living room, and I put my bunny away to his room, and I came back to my own bedroom to brush my teeth. And when I came into my bathroom, I just had one of the most bizarre and surreal experiences of my life. There, crawling on the floor in the bathroom next to the porcelain commode, was a bright red lobster, about a crayfish about 4 inches long. So it's not, a huge lobster. It's a small one about this big. And of course, I did a double take. Okay, this is 4 o'clock in the morning. And it took me a moment to realize that I wasn't dreaming, that I had to kind of like snap back to reality. And I then remembered that my husband had gotten a pet crayfish a few weeks ago. But the tank where the crayfish was kept was in our living room, which was a really long ways from our bedroom. So to get to our bedroom, this little lobster had to make it all the way across our living room, walk down a really long hallway, walk past another bathroom and several other rooms, turn right into our bedroom, and then make a left to go into our bathroom. And, it could have chosen to go anywhere else in the house, but it chose to show itself to me in the very same room where I was headed to brush my teeth at 4 o'clock in the morning. So, of course, I jolted my husband out of his slumber, yelling, "Lobster, lobster!" And he had no idea what was going on, and I just kind of shoved him into the direction of the bathroom. He was half asleep, and I was just kind of like pointing at it, super excited. And when he saw the little creature, his eyes, popped wide open. He was basically experiencing the same sort of surreal experience that I was having a moment ago. And he picked up the creature and put it back into its tank in our living room, securing the tank better than it had been before, okay? So then we went to bed. And a few nights later, nothing happened for like the next 2 nights, but then a few nights later at around midnight, my husband was in the bathroom again, and our bunny was standing by the door to the bathroom. And suddenly my bunny just jumped up into the air and like ran under the bed. And my husband turned around to see, towards the door to see what was happening. And the little lobster was again crawling into our bathroom. So the lobster spirit really wanted to show itself to us. And it kind of entered into our reality at the exact moments where it knew that it would be seen. Talk about having a captive audience when you're in the bathroom, right? So, as if, that wasn't enough, the next night, my extended family and I went out to dinner. And during dinner, the conversation turned into a conversation about lobsters, okay? And that is bizarre because it's not something that we normally talk about. We were not at a seafood restaurant or a lobster restaurant or anything like that. My sister-in-law happened to mention that her parents were eating her parents live in Australia, and they were eating a lot of lobsters at the time. And she pulled up all these pictures of lobsters on her phone to show us of, her parents enjoying lobsters and just fresh lobsters and just so many images of lobsters. And everybody at the table started to chip in on the conversation about lobsters. And okay, normally I wouldn't think that the subject of lobsters coming up at a dinner as being out of place or a synchronicity. But given what had happened that week, earlier in the week, with the 2 bathroom events, I definitely think that the universe was sort of winking at me with another lobster synchronicity. So basically, by that time, I couldn't wait to go home and look up what lobsters mean, the symbolism of lobsters. And it turns out the message for me was that the symbolism of lobsters is one of growth and renewal, because they molt and then they grow a new shell. So when I interpreted that message, it was actually very apt for this moment in my life right now, because I'm actually starting a new project, as I mentioned, taping this video, which I've never done before. So it is a new beginning. It is a period of growth for me, and it is a change and renewal for me. So the lobster symbolism is really apt. So if an animal keeps popping up in your life, like my lobster story, pay attention, try and figure out what it means for you, look up the symbolism of that animal, and interpret the message that it has for you. So you can feel reassured that you're going on the right path. And you might be surprised at how well this message resonates with your current experience. Okay, and the 7th sign of synchronicities is when you see images or you hear messages, see people, images, animals, insects, any of the things I mentioned earlier in dreams. So one of the times that when we're the most receptive to signs from the universe and from spirit is when we're asleep and dreaming. That's because in this state, the conscious mind is resting and our subconscious can come out to play. And our subconscious mind can interpret messages and make natural connections that we're not always able to make when we're awake. So looking out for recurring themes in your dreams is it's a good way to receive messages or signs. Maybe you are dreaming of the same person or the same phrase or situation again and again. You should definitely spend some time to think about what this means for you. And if you notice a significant dream, you may be having a premonition, so don't ignore it. There's a reason why you're receiving this guidance, so pay attention. And the final sign of synchronicity, the 8th sign, is when you think about something and then it happens. So this is something that we've all experienced at some point in our lives. When you think of something and it happens, and whether or not you acknowledge it, that's another matter. But when we think about something and it appears, it happens, this is a clear sign that our manifesting powers are strong. Remember, I talked about how you can use synchronicities to manifest your dreams at the beginning of this video. So take this as a sign of encouragement and to use this power to manifest your dreams into reality. It's the power of your own mind. So you need to harness it and train it and learn how to interpret these messages for yourself to propel you forward to manifest your dreams. So, as I mentioned earlier, just to recap, how do you interpret these messages and signs that the universe is sending you? Basically, we have to use our intuition. And hopefully my funny stories helped you to to see how you can use your own intuition to interpret these messages. Okay, the second thing you can do is to meditate and go inwards. Meditation is a great way to connect to your inner self, to have a deeper sense of awareness, and doing it regularly and consistently. Sorry, you can't just meditate one time and think that you'll be able to sort of get this deeper level of awareness. You have to do it on a consistent basis. You will eventually raise your vibration over time as you come up with a meditation practice that you do consistently, and this will heighten your perception and level of consciousness, which then you can use to interpret messages and signs. So meditation is another thing you can do to help you to be able to interpret and make these connections, okay? And also you need to listen to your body. Our body is very intuitive. When something doesn't feel right, it probably isn't right, and it's giving you a message. It's warning you about something. So don't ignore that. Really pay attention to what your body is telling you. And another thing you can do is to explore symbolism. As I mentioned with my lobster story, I didn't know what that meant. I had to look it up. So if you start exploring the idea of symbolism, what certain animals mean, what certain phrases could possibly mean, what certain words mean, you can then use that to interpret these meaningful connections and then make these connections which will help you to manifest. Okay, so definitely look up symbolism that you're unfamiliar with, or just, get a book on symbolism that you can read. And so when you see a synchronicity sign in your outer world, you can then recognize it and then interpret its meaning based on the symbolism. And as I mentioned earlier, you can keep a journal, which really helps because, when we dream or when we just live our lives, oftentimes we forget what happens during the day. And if we're writing it down, we can then go back and look at it and make connections. And you can also practice free writing. Free writing is basically, it's like keeping a journal, but you're not recording events that happened. You are basically writing down any thoughts or any feelings or any words, any images that are coming up for you in your mind, and just write it down. And in the same way as keeping a journal, you can then go back, read it, and see if there's anything in there that resonates with you, that you can make connections and draw meaning from for you. So when you're able to make these connections in your life, you can use it as guidance. It's guidance from your inner self, your higher self. You can use it to manifest your dreams because your inner self knows what you want most, what sort of dreams you have. As I said, you have this inner GPS that you've programmed since you were a child, so you know where you want to go. You just need the guidance, and you just need to be able to recognize the signs. So by doing all of this, recognizing synchronicities, being able to interpret synchronicities, you can then use that as guidance to manifest your dreams. So I hope you enjoyed this video. It's my first one, so I will be doing more of these to help you to live your best life and to live your purpose. See you next time.